This is Olivia Miles and Cheryl Reeve.
Series held. Pull up, she's fouled.
Okay, so a foul was called, and you see Olivia Miles jumping up and down, showing the emotion. Hey, that wasn't a foul. Review that. Let's go. Let's go. I'm not going for it. I'm mad. Pay attention.
Emphatically wants to rebuke you.
Not at all happy about that whistle, right?
Watch that interaction carefully, because what you just witnessed is a masterclass in coaching a young superstar. That's Cheryl Reeve and Olivia Miles on the Minnesota Lynx sideline, and the contrast to what we've been seeing in Indiana couldn't be more stark. Olivia Miles just got hit with a questionable foul call. She's fired up, showing emotion, arguing with the refs. And pay attention to what happens next, because this is how you handle a passionate point guard without crushing their competitive fire.
Right there.
And Coach Reeve is going to bring it. And Olivia hoping for some vindication here. She is so competitive. She is so passionate. She's talking.
All right, you see that? You see that? You see how she didn't try to police her emotions and just take her heart and emotion out of the game? You see how she had let her come to the...
She's talking to Coach. Thanks for having my back. That's the relationship right there. Reeve didn't send an assistant coach running onto the floor to grab her. She didn't yell at her from the sideline to control herself. She let Miles come to her. They talked it through, and Miles felt supported instead of policed. Now contrast that with what's been happening in Indiana all season, because Stephanie White has been handling Caitlin Clark's emotions in the exact opposite way, and it's becoming a problem.
This is what Stephanie White prefers to happen when Caitlin Clark shows some emotion. Hyping up the crowd. Okay. You know, we remember the situation where she's hyping up the crowd. You go, look at this. What are you doing? What are you, that's not how you handle it. We don't need you policing Caitlin Clark's emotions. Her emotions is a part of why she goes off and destroys a lot of these players. We don't need this. We don't need y'all doing this.
There it is. Assistant coaches physically restraining Caitlin Clark on the court, grabbing her, pulling her back, treating her like she's out of control when all she's doing is hyping up the crowd after a big play. This isn't coaching, this is suppression. And it's particularly frustrating because Clark's emotion is part of what makes her great. That competitive fire, that passion, that refusal to back down, those aren't flaws that need to be corrected, they're strengths that need to be channeled. Cheryl Reeve understands this. The question is whether Stephanie White ever will.
Yeah, I think she just has a maturity about her, right? So pick and roll game is obviously a lot of the pro game.
Pick and roll game is obviously a big part of the pro game. Whoa. Cheryl Reeves is saying, hey, the pick and roll game is a big part of the pro game. You are trying to get rid of it. We have the best pick and roll tandem in the entire league in Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston, the most unstoppable two-man game in the league. You have gotten rid of it with your hub of an offense, okay? That's one. She acknowledges the pick and roll is a huge part. But notice when they ask her the question about Olivia Miles, she keeps it about Olivia Miles, and she addresses and speaks glowingly about Olivia Miles.
Yeah, I think she just has a maturity about her, right? So
listen to how Reeve talks about Olivia Miles when asked about her development. She highlights maturity, tempo control, the ability to manipulate defenses with pace changes. She talks about Miles playing with her eyes, being physically ready for the pro game. This is a coach speaking glowingly about her point guard's strengths and development. She's not deflecting to other players, she's not making excuses, she's celebrating what makes Miles special. Now think about how Stephanie White has handled questions about Caitlin Clark this season. Too often she's either been overly critical in public or she's shifted focus to other players entirely. When your superstar breaks records, you don't minimize it. When she shows emotion, you don't treat it like a discipline problem. You do what Cheryl Reeve does. You support it, channel it, and let your player know you have their back.
Pick and roll game is obviously a lot of the pro game. But I think even more than that, I think some of the hardest things to teach players when they come into the league is about tempo and pace. So if you look at how she plays with tremendous tempo. She manipulates defenses with a slowdown, a speed up, a burst, and you don't know which one she's doing. She plays with her eyes well. So manipulating defenses is just something that's Probably great at any level, but certainly I think it's allowed her to find the immediate success that she has. She's physically ready, and I think those are usually some of the challenges for young players.
And here's what makes Reeve's approach even more impressive. She specifically mentions that pick and roll is a huge part of the pro game. The pick and roll. You know, that two-man game that Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston perfected last season, the most unstoppable offensive weapon the Fever had. The same pick and roll that Stephanie White has systematically removed from Indiana's offense this year with her hub system. Think about that for a second. One of the most successful coaches in WNBA history is emphasizing how important the pick and roll is for young point guards. Meanwhile, the Fever have the best pick and roll duo in the league, and their coach decided to scrap it entirely. That's not adaptation, that's coaching malpractice.
With the nonsense that Tiffany Hayes pulled after the game, getting caught on the hot mic, being a hater in the press conference. And mind you, she started all of this. She was the one yapping and chirping to start out this game. Couldn't take the heat, so she had to get up out the kitchen. This is going to be a big game in Golden State. Okay, Caitlin Clark just beat the Golden State Valkyries for the first time in her career last game. So this is going to be a big time game. It's going to be sold out. Golden State's crowd comes out, especially with the GOAT coming to town. It's going to be rocking in there.
Now let's be clear about something. We're not exactly Cheryl Reeve fans around here. Her decision to leave Caitlin Clark off Team USA was questionable at best. The way she handled that entire situation left a lot to be desired. But you know what? None of that changes the fact that she's a championship-level coach who knows how to develop and support young talent. And right now, she's giving Stephanie White a free coaching clinic on how to handle a dynamic point guard. The lesson is simple. Let your stars be stars. Support their competitive fire instead of trying to extinguish it. When they show emotion, have their back instead of treating it like a problem. Talk about them publicly the way championship coaches talk about their best players, with pride, with specifics, with genuine appreciation for what makes them special. Here's what this comes down to. Coaching in the WNBA isn't about imposing your system on talented players and forcing them to conform. It's about recognizing what makes your best players elite and building around those strengths. Cheryl Reeve gets this. She's won 5 WNBA championships because she understands that managing personalities and emotions is just as important as X's and O's. Stephanie White came into Indiana with a specific offensive system in mind. The hub offense, where the ball goes through the elbow and players make decisions from there. On paper, it's designed to create more balanced scoring and get everyone involved. In practice, it's neutralized the Fever's best offensive weapon. The Clark to Boston pick and roll was devastating last season because it combined Clark's court vision and passing with Boston's finishing ability around the rim. Defenses couldn't stop it. Now they don't have to worry about it because the Fever barely run it anymore. But the offensive system is only part of the problem. The bigger issue is how White has handled Clark's competitive nature. Every great point guard in basketball history has played with emotion. They've talked trash, they've celebrated big plays, they've gotten fired up when calls don't go their way. That's not immaturity, that's championship mentality. And when you try to suppress that, you're not making your player more professional. You're taking away part of what makes them great. Watch that Olivia Miles sequence again. She's arguing with the refs, clearly frustrated, showing visible emotion on the court. Cheryl Reeve doesn't panic. She doesn't send someone to physically restrain her. She lets Miles express that frustration, then brings her to the sideline for a conversation. That's emotional intelligence. That's understanding that your job as a coach isn't to turn your point guard into a robot. It's to help them channel their passion productively. The contrast with how Indiana's coaching staff has handled Clark is jarring. We've seen assistant coaches sprint onto the floor to grab her after she celebrates with the crowd. We've seen them yelling at her from the sideline when she shows emotion. We've seen White deflect praise away from Clark in post-game interviews, shifting focus to other players when asked specifically about the rookie's performance. None of this builds trust, none of this makes Clark feel supported, and none of this is how you develop a superstar. Now, to White's credit, she did better in the most recent post-game interview. She spoke more positively about Clark's performance and didn't deflect as much. Maybe she's learning, maybe she's adjusting. But one good press conference doesn't erase a pattern that's been building all season. And with the Fever facing the Golden State Valkyries tomorrow, we're about to see whether these lessons have actually sunk in. That Golden State game is huge for multiple reasons. First, Clark just beat the Valkyries for the first time in her career last game. That's significant because Golden State has been one of the tougher matchups for her this season. Second, there's the Tiffany Hayes situation. Hayes got caught on a hot mic after the last game being a hater, and she was the one who started the chirping during that game. She talked trash, couldn't handle it when Clark fired back, and then complained about it afterward. That's weak, And you know the Valkyries are going to come out aggressive tomorrow trying to prove something. Third, and most importantly, Natalie Nakase is one of the better tactical coaches in the league. She's going to have a defensive game plan specifically designed to slow down Caitlin Clark. She's going to throw different looks at her, try to get the ball out of her hands, force other players to beat them, and this is where Stephanie White's coaching will really be tested. Can she make in-game adjustments? Can she counter what Nakase throws at them? Can she put Clark in positions to succeed against a defense designed to neutralize her? The Fever's defensive approach in the last game was concerning. They switched everything on ball screens, which is exactly what you don't want to do against a team with multiple scoring threats. Switching creates mismatches and allows offenses to hunt favorable matchups. Against Golden State's movement and shooting, that's a recipe for disaster. Indiana needs to be more aggressive on the defensive end. They need to fight through screens, show hard on ball handlers, and force the Valkyries into uncomfortable situations. Offensively, here's what needs to happen. More pick and roll, period. Clark and Boston are too good in that action to abandon it completely. You don't have to run it every possession, but it needs to be a consistent part of the offense. And when defenses try to take it away by hedging hard or switching, that's when you use the hub offense to create advantages elsewhere. The two systems aren't mutually exclusive. You can run both, but you have to actually use your best weapons. Also, get Aliyah Boston more post touches. Not every possession, but enough to keep defenses honest. Boston is too skilled in the paint to just be a screener and roller. When she gets deep position, give her the ball and let her work. That opens up everything else because it forces help defenders to commit, which creates driving lanes and open threes. But more than any X's and O's adjustment, Stephanie White needs to get out of Caitlin Clark's way emotionally. Let her play with fire, let her celebrate, let her talk trash when opponents start chirping. Don't treat her competitive nature like it's a problem that needs to be managed. The best players in the world play with emotion. Michael Jordan talked trash constantly. Kobe Bryant was famously intense. Larry Bird was one of the greatest trash talkers in basketball history. Nobody told them to calm down or control their emotions. Their coaches understood that the fire was part of what made them great. That's the lesson Cheryl Reeve is teaching right now. And it's not just about Olivia Miles. It's about understanding what championship coaching actually looks like. It's about supporting your best players publicly and privately. It's about having their back when they show emotion, instead of treating it like a character flaw. It's about building your system around their strengths, rather than forcing them into a system that doesn't fit. The Indiana Fever have the best young player in the WNBA. They have a legitimate Rookie of the Year and potentially an MVP caliber talent in Caitlin Clark. They have a skilled big in Aliyah Boston who can finish, pass, and defend. They have the pieces to be a really good team, but they're being held back by coaching decisions that don't make sense. And until that changes, they're going to continue underperforming their talent level. Tomorrow's game against Golden State will tell us a lot. Will we see more pick and roll? Will we see Boston getting post touches? Will we see the coaching staff letting Clark play with emotion instead of trying to suppress it? Or will we see the same patterns that have frustrated Fever fans all season? Because at some point, you have to adjust. At some point, you have to recognize that what you're doing isn't working and try something different. Cheryl Reeve has 5 championships because she's willing to adapt. She builds her system around her players' strengths. She supports them emotionally. She speaks about them with pride and specificity. That's not complicated. That's just good coaching. And it's exactly what Stephanie White needs to start doing if the Indiana Fever are going to reach their potential. The talent is there. The question is whether the coaching will catch up. So here's what I want to know. Do you think Stephanie White is actually learning from this? Do you think we're going to see real changes in how she handles Caitlin Clark? Or is this just going to be more of the same? And what do you expect to see in tomorrow's game against Golden State? Drop your predictions in the comments. And if you think I'm right about this coaching comparison, hit that like button and subscribe, because we're going to keep breaking down exactly what's happening with this Fever team all season long.